Hi, Dave Borton from Mill City Roasters in Minneapolis, Minnesota. It's gotten cold here in Minneapolis this week. So I've been gifted and I'm doing product placement for Cafe Imports. I have two guests today. Our old favorite, Joe Marrocco from Cafe Imports.
Hello again.
And Jackson O'Brien from Peace Coffee. Joe, how about introducing yourself first?
You got it, Dave. Like he said, I'm still Joe, and I am still at Cafe Imports, where we sell green coffee and where I am the director of education and also one of the senior sales guys. I also am on the Roasters Guild Executive Council and help teach a lot of SCAA classes, so maybe some of you have taken some online courses, coffee buying or green coffee related, something like that. I think that's me.
Jackson.
Yeah. Should I talk about Peace Coffee and myself, or just myself, or?
Yes.
Yes, okay, cool. So yeah, I'm Jackson, I'm from Peace Coffee. We are a 100% fair trade and organic roaster from Minneapolis. We were founded in 1996 by a group called IATP, that's the International Agriculture and Trade Policy Institute. And so the story goes that back in 96 they were talking with these farmers in Chiapas, Mexico, about how to better have international agriculture trade between the two nations. And they said, you know what, all this talk is well and good, but what we really need is for somebody to buy our coffee at a price that'll pay our operating costs. And IATP said, well, that's all well and good, but we're a think tank, we don't really do that. And allegedly the but we're a think tank portion of the conversation got lost in translation. And as a result, a shipping container's worth of coffee, that's 36,000 pounds. Showed up with their name and a bill for the aforementioned fair trade price. And they said, okay, well, we could send these back, or we could put our money where our mouth is and say this is a viable business model.
And Peace Coffee was
born.
launched.
Yeah.
Now you've got 3 retail shops.
4 retail shops.
4 retail shops in the Twin Cities.
Yep.
And your job and role there is?
Yeah, we just expanded into retail about 5 years ago, and that meant that they needed somebody who knew how to brew the coffee, and that's my job. My job is to make sure that the coffee is brewed as well as possible in every application.
So you're a barista, you're the barista trainer, you're the top dog of baristas at Peace Coffee.
Yes, sir.
Very good. Before we go any further, we've got a little special announcement. We have T-shirts this month. And it's Vote for Roaster Joe. Joe, our very own Joe Marrocco.
Oh my gosh, that's ridiculous.
Has been nominated for the Field of Excellence by Sprudge.com. We're all voting for Joe. I'd encourage you to go to Sprudge, SPRUDGE, Sprudge.com/vote. Scroll all the way down to the very bottom, and it's the Field of Excellence. And we're giving Joe a hard time today, but in all seriousness, Field of Excellence, I know of no one in coffee that's done more to advance roaster knowledge, barista knowledge, home roasters knowledge, and so we gladly vote for Joe.
Oh, why, thank you. I did not see that coming, by the way, so I'm very caught off guard. Good grief, that's hilarious.
We've all got them on in the show.
That is hilarious. Amazing. That's awesome.
So,
and I'll add to that it's opportunities like this that are kind of given that allows me to even be on a docket like that. So that nomination is all of our nominations. So thank you very, very much. Oh yes. So this is a new hat Cafe Imports has out. It's not only cool looking and cool. Oldest hat design companies in the U.S. It's a craft product, U.S. craft product. Also made by Minnesota Leatherworks here in town, so local. And also we have a little tag that was taken off of a bag of coffee, cut and sewed and designed by Phenom here in town in Minneapolis. Phenom is a really high-end quality clothing store, shoes mainly.
And a portion of the sales goes to?
Yes, please buy these on our website. They're $49 all in if you're in the US, Australia, or Canada. That includes shipping, and $25 from every portion or every hat that's sold will go for Grounds for Health, which is an awesome organization, nonprofit. So please buy them.
Grounds for Health is out of Vermont, do a phenomenal job in coffee growing communities for women in the early detection and prevention of cervical cancers. Give early, give often, buy now, buy later.
That's right. And we make no money off of these hats or anything. They're just 100% for the donation. So we appreciate the partnership with you all.
Let's see, December is Fair Trade Organic. We're going to be roasting a Fair Trade Organic from Rwanda. It's the Copac Cooperative, Fair Trade Organically Farmed. Joe's going to roast that for us, but as promised, it's tips from the trier. Joe, we had a lot of discussion on Home Barista about what is it that you can discern from that trier. So let's spend some time really hanking over that trier today and see what you can smell.
That sounds great to me.
Pardon us while we get Artisan set up and we get the roaster to temp.
Where you want to drop this today, Dave?
398.
I'm going to raise this temp up a little bit. Back my air down a little bit. Hold a little bit of that heat. 398, you say?
Yes.
All right, so right now we're at 375, so we're going to raise the temperature above 398. We're not just going to shoot it up there. We're going to raise it up there nice and slow so that we know that our drum is actually at full heat. I could totally turn my airflow off and fake it that we're getting to that temperature, or I can let it raise very slowly so that we know that the full drum is hot.
So what you're suggesting is the ambient temp may be to 398, but you're giving the drum time to come up and equal that ambient temp.
One nice absorption of the energy that we're putting into the drum.
We've got 1 kilo or 2.2 pounds of Rwanda Copac Fair Trade Organic Coffee. It's our coffee of the month. It's on the website. Grab some while it's still there.
So now this is reading 400, 401. I've opened the airflow. So I want to have that airflow open for a moment and see if that drops the temperature too quickly or if we're going to actually hold here, and we are holding here. So I'm going to turn our gas almost all the way off, put my coffee up in the top. Now it's cascading down. It's 398 and go. My airflow is now on 20, which is the lowest we'll go. 25? Okay. Going to 25.
Burner on or burner off, Joe?
Generally, I like to start with the burner on just a little bit so that I don't have to ignite it during the roast. So we left the gas very low on about 1.5 for right now.
Low setting, the temperature within the drum and the drum is cascading downward.
So practically speaking, if I have my burner off and I go to ignite it when I have coffee in the drum and something happens with that ignition process, then I'm stuck with coffee in the drum and wasted product perhaps as I'm trying to scramble to get that lit. So dropping it in with the burner lid is always a good idea. Okay, so I'm gonna let Dave kind of take over some of the control so that I can focus on talking a little bit as we go. We're a minute in. We're gonna go ahead and charge this roast up to 4. Is that about 4?
I'll set it.
Okay, thank you. So I'm gonna talk about what I'm smelling, what's good about what I'm smelling, what's bad about what I'm smelling, or if there were something good or bad, the inverse of what I am smelling. Okay, so right now my coffee is green. As we know, a plant that is green because it has a compound in it called chlorophyll. Chlorophyll is a storage unit of food. If I go out and mow my lawn, I'm cutting grass that is green that is filled with chlorophyll. that aroma that you get of cut grass is that chlorophyll that we have broken open. We're breaking that chlorophyll with heat right now. The heat is causing those molecules to really move very intensely, and that's causing breakage of those molecules. So it will smell like cut grass in this stage of green coffee, especially as it begins to get hot. If it does not smell like cut grass, then that means that there's something wrong. So some of the other flavors that you could get are a really funky flavor, like a wet dog kind of flavor, or a bag that is wet kind of flavor, or aroma. I might use the word flavor in place of aroma. And what that is that's some kind of input from whatever that coffee came in, or the coffee is really old and starting to get what we would call baggy. And that will really start expressing itself in the beginning stages of this roast. So you don't want to smell anything super baggy. Also, another aroma that we want to avoid throughout the entire roasting process is any kind of really smoky aroma. If you start smelling something that is really smoky this early in the roast, there could possibly be a fire from your last roast somewhere in your system. So you want to make sure that you're not smelling any kind of smoke unless you want to smell smoke later towards second crack, if you're going into second crack.
260 at 3 minutes.
Okay, so we're about 3 minutes in, and now what I'm starting to smell is that the grass is beginning to fade away. Jackson, you want to smell with me?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And you can maybe describe some of these aromas that you're getting too. So the grass is beginning to fade away, and now it's starting to smell a little bit more like lima beans or some kind of a green bean flavor. It's green cooking kind of aroma. Do you have anything to add?
I was just going to say generically vegetal, yeah, greens.
Yep. And so that makes sense. We're cooking the chlorophyll. It's starting to cook down. As we get closer to yellow, think about grass again, or some kind of organic material, plant matter, that is yellow. Things that come to mind that would be grassy-like and yellow are wheat. Wheat is a type of grass. Straw, hay, those are cut grasses that have been dried. So as I start moving into the yellow stage and that chlorophyll is all the way broken down, I'm getting to some raw carbohydrates that have not yet been broken down. And so I'm going to smell that raw carbohydrate. I'm also getting to cellulose, which cellulose is the fibrous structural molecule that basically holds all plant material together. And that cellulose is really going to start becoming more aromatic. So now we're getting to that yellow point. What time and temp are we at, Dave?
4.5 minutes, 325.
So now you can start smelling a little bit of a wheat-like. It almost is like wheat berries that are being cooked, or like farro, if you're a geeky foodie, like a type of barley or something. Maybe even a little bit like a barley mash. That carbohydrate is now going to start getting broken down. Of course, we know that if we take the seeds of that grass, if we take wheats and barleys and rye, and we roast it a little bit, or if we grind it and cook it, we can get aromas that are similar to bread, cookies, beer, all of those cooked carbohydrates type aroma. And now that this yellow, which I'm going to switch to the other camera here, I'm going to switch to camera B. I don't know if you can see that there, but we're starting to get deeper into the yellow, and it's starting to get just a touch of brown. And now if you want to smell that, what are we smelling there?
Definitely some more grainy kind of things, like some cooked rice.
Dry end yet, Joe?
We are definitely through yellow. Okay.
You're at 355 at 6 minutes.
We need to turn this gas down a bit.
Yep.
All right. We're at about 2.5 on gas there. So yeah, that carbohydrate is beginning to cook. It's beginning to break down. And when carbohydrates break down, they turn into sugars, more simple sugars. So carbohydrate is a very complex sugar. It's a non-soluble material generally that is stored energy in the seed structure of the plant, of the seed.
Yeah, turn your air up.
Yes.
And the
We're at 60 right. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm looking at the drum speed. Great. I'm going to go ahead and crank this air all the way to 60 at this point. So now we're getting deeper into the roast. I'm still avoiding any kind of smoky aroma. I don't want to smell anything funky. I don't want to smell anything rotten because that's a green coffee quality issue. Right now, the carbohydrates are breaking down such that, and I know that there are arguments out here that you can't smell sweet technically, but you can certainly smell when cookies are baking or when something that is a baked good that is sweet is cooking, you can smell that it is sweet. There are molecules that are broken down that are giving off aromas that we associate with sweet things, and this smells like a sweet baked good. It smells like cookies baking. There's a deeper level of complexity to the aroma that's happening in the coffee at this point.
Sound like brownies baking.
Brownies, yes. I'm gonna put this back in. Or like a really sugary cereal, like Cocoa Pebbles or something like that.
380 at 7.5.
All right. So that means that our carbohydrates are breaking down really well. I'm gonna turn the gas down a little bit more here.
You're going into first.
Yep, we're gonna be moving into first. So coffee is extremely diverse in the possibility of aromatic components or compounds that are going to be created during the roasting process. There are all kinds of assimilations of different molecules that can create a vast number of aromas. So as we're smelling, as we're getting into first crack, those more large molecules have been broken up into all different pieces. And the way that those pieces come together and form new molecules is what we're now gonna smell in the aroma. So as you're getting into first crack, this is where we start getting a very large diversification in the aromas that you're smelling. So as I'm smelling now, I can smell that we are moving into first crack even before I hear first crack, which I am hearing first crack, by the way. So first crack is on, and what are some of the aromas that you all got from that?
I got a little floral jasmine kind of flavor from it.
Give you guys some more here.
Well, floral, I say, and I'd also say that there's the beginning of the roast profile.
A little hint of roasted coffee. Darker chocolates. I'm getting vanilla. Vanilla is kind of a more roasty note. The diversification of aromas is really starting to burst forward.
Joe,
Now,
your delta bean temp is down to 1.
thank you. So now, coffee is really kind of going slow, but I'm gonna let it go slow for a minute. If I make an adjustment now to speed it up, my coffee's gonna just wanna take off after we get through first crack. So it's okay, we're gonna let it kind of ride for a moment here.
Bean temp 394 at 9:45.
394, 940. Okay, great. I am gonna turn this up just a touch. Just a little bit. Okay, so it's very easy as a roaster for me to start smelling first crack. I'm gonna let you handle dropping it and stuff like that. It's very easy as a roaster for me to smell first crack and just get caught up in the euphoria of the aesthetic experience. It's not only about smelling the coffee to enjoy the coffee or to say, oh wow, that's a really explosive aroma, this is gonna be a delicious coffee. It's more, I'm making sure that all of the aromas are happening at the time that they should happen. That if I am smelling that bread-like aroma, it's not happening while the coffee is still green. If I'm smelling that really floral-like aroma, it's not happening while the coffee is still yellow. I want to have everything compartmentalized in the place that it should be. If it's not, that means that I'm moving too quickly or I'm moving too slowly. If I'm at first crack, and while at first crack I'm smelling bread-like aroma and it's not really opening up to a diverse palate, then I know that some of the coffee in that drum is not quite caught up to what visually I'm seeing or auditorily that I'm hearing. So another side of that is I'm double checking to make sure that there are no roast defects going on. I'm using my eyes, I'm using my ears, I'm using the time, and I'm using my nose. We can't taste this coffee while it's roasting, but what we're selling is a taste experience. So by using that trier and engaging in the aromatic expression of the coffee as it's roasting, that's the closest that I'm going to get to actually tasting the coffee until I'm able to cup it or brew it, you know, a day after it's roasted. So it's kind of like your spoon. If you're a chef, you're tasting the broth. Here, I'm making sure that everything is developing in a corresponding way to the last time that coffee was roasted, or to what I think that coffee should be moving through at a particular time.
Joe, I'm struck. How long did it take you to develop the sensory appreciation that you have?
Well, I wouldn't say that it took very long to understand where different stages of development smell a certain way. And also, when you get your first whiff of smoke when it's green, or you get your first harsh aroma when it's yellow, we are physiologically geared to, like, our noses are put on our faces to tell us when something is wrong. So if we're using our noses to tell us that something is wrong, it's not really a steep learning curve. It's something that you already are naturally gifted with. It's just a matter of knowing what to associate that aroma with. So hopefully now you'll have the tool to know right away if you're smelling something that's super smoky and it's early in the roast, there's something wrong. As you do it more and more, of course, you do get better and better. As you roast one particular coffee 10 times, 30 times, 100 times, you're going to begin noticing very subtle variation in the way that the coffee smells during different stages of the roast. And that is a learned characteristic. And that's really, truly what separates everyday roaster who that is their job, and somebody like me who I get to roast a coffee 2 or 3 times at this point, and then I get to move on to another coffee. Of course, if you get to roast 100 different coffees, then you develop a different set of skills for seeing more congruencies from coffee to coffee, or more discongruencies from coffee to coffee. So it's all experience. It's all good.
It's all good. I just react to it because I've been on this gas machine for about a year, and it took me a good 6 months before I could put that experience together for myself.
And if you don't have somebody that's there to tell you what each thing is, it's really hard to make, like, it's hard to smell something that smells like hay when you're roasting coffee and be like, that's correct. This should smell like hay right now. It's really hard to just a priori know that that's a correct aroma.
Sure.
So that's why I want to give you guys the tools.
So you've got the tips from the trier from Vote for Roaster Joe. Joe, is that cool yet?
This is almost cool.
And so I'll turn that blower off. You can't pick it up there, but it's pretty loud sitting right here, the cooling fan. And then we want to move into the discussion of fair trade, organic coffee, conventional coffee. And again, like I said it before, this is not an either or. About 10% of our coffees here are fair trade organic because we've got a decent number of folks out there that roast that want the fair trade organic. And there's some excellent coffees as this month's Rwanda shows us. So we'll go with that.
We're good.
Jackson, let's throw it to you for a bit. What's
Cool.
fair trade?
Okay, so fair trade, I'm going to talk about kind of this straw man, boogeyman kind of thing, which is like an old school, what I call opaque trade. This doesn't really happen an awful lot anymore, but it's helpful to have as a comparison for fair trade.
Some early context.
Yeah.
Yep.
Like, this is not like what Cafe Imports does. This is not what a lot of really good specialty importers do anymore. But it is nonetheless some helpful context to have. So it used to be that if you were a small shareholder farmer in, Guatemala or Rwanda or whatever, that there would be a guy who drove up the mountain with a pickup truck, and he would just shout from his pickup truck, "I'm buying coffee today, 85 cents a pound," and it was take it or leave it. and you didn't know whether or not there would be another guy coming up the pickup truck the next day, or and if he was selling the coffee for less than your operating costs, then you just didn't pay your operating costs that year. And it was a unfortunate state of affairs. And so a bunch of these farmers decided that, okay, enough is enough. We need to actually have some selling power on the market. And so they started banding together into these sellers' cooperatives in order to actually be able to sell their coffee on the market and have the same kind of selling power that like big estates and whatnot have.
So cooperative refers to a band of farmers banding together, not cooperative up a vertical chain.
Correct. Yeah, it's a democratic process, and in order for the cooperative system to work, you need to get like anywhere from 200 to 3,000 farmers to all sign off on harvesting the same level of quality of coffee, harvesting it at around the same time, processing it in similar ways, and shooting for similar quality goals. I find it difficult to get 20 baristas to do the same thing at the same time. I can't imagine what kind of work that takes to like get that cooperative organized.
So what's fair trade getting them per pound? Is there a base that doesn't drift below?
There is a base that it doesn't drift below. The coffee that is traded throughout the world has a base price of the C commodity market. This is the Chicago Commodities Exchange. Basically does some math using finance that I don't fully understand, based on how much coffee there is in the world and how many people want to drink it, more or less, and decides that this is what the base price is. And fair trade guarantees that these cooperatives are paid at least, I think the current thing is 41 cents above.
Okay, so what's the C up this morning? $1.30?
No. I want to say it's around $1.20, $1.22, and so basically the C market functions off of the New York Stock Exchange, and it is basically your fair trade will be a quantity above C market unless the C market goes too low. And once the C market bottoms out, there's a floor that you can no longer pay less than, I think it's $1.35 or $1.45 or something like that. Right. We pay a lot above that, so I don't know exactly what the floor is at this moment. But.
Okay, so that's based all off the C, and there's a partition here that if the C is at $1.30, those guys are going to get $1.70 a pound at the minimum. And they may contract higher.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. How about organic? What's organic coffee?
Organic coffee is any coffee that does not use any artificial pesticides or artificial fertilizers. These are defined by the United States Department of Agriculture. If you go to USDA.gov and look at the organic standards, you can see like a big list of like these are the pesticides and fertilizers that are not used in organic coffee.
No herbicides, no pesticides, no petrochemical inputs in terms of fertilizer. Joe, how about the other side? Conventional farming, what's used?
Yeah, so conventional farming is basically we can refer to it as non-certified farming. So it doesn't necessarily mean that something is used or isn't used. It means that there has not been third-party verification that there is a cooperative that is banded together according to a certain set of guidelines. There also has not been any kind of third-party verification that the inputs into the farm are in fact organic. That doesn't mean that those things are not the case, it just means that it's not verified. However, many times it is the case that there are chemical fertilizers used. Many times it is the case that that farmer might be selling outside of some kind of a cooperative. So pros and cons of that. If there is a farmer who is on the top of a hill, who has the best soil, who has the best yield as far as quality is concerned, who has very high quality varieties, that farmer, if they have enough land, is not really going to need to plug into a cooperative in order to meet the marketplace. They can sell their coffee for a high enough price based on the quality that they have that they can just go direct to an importer or an exporter and get their coffee prices outside of that. There are cases where a farmer may have the majority of their coffee plugged in through a cooperative, and they may be holding micro lots outside of the cooperative, and there may be some direct relational purchasing done with their micro lot coffee. That's also not to say at the same time that it's only lower quality farmers that are members of cooperatives. If you have a very, very small farm, you may not have the quantity in order to meet the marketplace in a way that's viable for your farm. So you may have to plug into the cooperative because of that. Or many situations socially are structured in a way to where the social makeup of that community is such that it's more geared toward cooperative work. Other social structures in other countries or other regions that grow coffee may be such that they're more rogue and they don't like to be socially networked. Other places, like in Costa Rica, you don't see very many fair trade cooperatives at all, and that's mainly because they're able to, as a country, get much above the seafloor, so they're not at any kind of they're not worried about a fair trade minimum. They're making much higher prices than that. They may also be growing organic, but they don't necessarily need to certify because they don't need that little extra bonus for all of the input that goes in. There's a lot of danger in using only organic sometimes if a blight like Roya or leaf rust as we call it comes through, or Broca comes through. So there are a lot of pros and cons to this. So there's no like one right way or wrong way. It's very specific to that community, that farmer, that situation, the quality that they're looking for, the quantity that they're able to get on all of that.
The Peace Coffee Shop, I think you said you've got 4 retail shops now.
Correct.
New one downtown.
Yep.
You're in a buying cooperative with about 25 other roasteries throughout the U.S. that share that same mission vision of working exclusively with FTO farmers. Talk about that buying relationship, how that benefits Peace and the other 24, and how it benefits the co-ops.
Right. So again, if you're looking at your standard buying arrangement of coffee, you conceivably have, an individual shareholder farmer who then sells to a middleman, who then sells to a miller, who then sells to an exporter, who then sells to an importer, who then sells to a roaster / retailer, who then sells to a member of the general public. And that's, 8 people who all got to get their share of the pie. The idea is not that importers don't deserve their share of the pie.
Vote for Joe.
The nature of what we do, however, is that the...
Go right ahead.
Okay, yeah. The nature of what we do is that the small shareholder members collectively own the exporting cooperative. They often own their own mills. Some of them have their own exporting license. So that's effectively those shares of the pie go straight to the farmer. And then in an attempt to cut another person out of the supply chain, coffee is bought and sold on the commodities market by the shipping container, which is 36,000 pounds. And that's more coffee than any one small roaster really needs. So what happens is there's 22, I think, at last count, members of Cooperative Coffees, which is our importer cooperative. So we all chip in some certain amount for a container's worth of coffee, and then divvy it up once it gets stateside to the members who have all pitched in for that, shipping container's worth is there. That always amuses me when I'm here in the Twin Cities, because there are 3 roaster members who sell in this area. There's Peace Coffee, there's Kickapoo Coffee, and there's Just Coffee. And I see like the bulk bins in the natural foods co-ops that say like Peace Coffee, Guatemalan Dark, Just Coffee, Guatemalan Dark, Kickapoo Coffee, Guatemalan Dark. And it's very possible that it's all the exact same roasted raw product that came from an individual farm, and then it just came from, it was then roasted in Viroqua, Minneapolis, and Madison. To different standards, obviously, but it's, the same stuff, ultimately.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and we purchase, I think, like 95% of our coffee through the importer. We purchase the occasional lot from Cafe Imports. We try every year to purchase something from a cooperative called Finca Triunfo Verde, which is a really cool cooperative.
Grab some of the Rwandan Popak this year. It's good. So you've got 25 other buying partners out there. How about in terms of how does that benefit the communities back in Central America, back in Rwanda?
Well, a lot of it has to do with kind of how we can have these long-term buying relationships with these folks. This means that we can continue to purchase year after year, container after container, to make sure that we're getting not just that we're buying coffee from these folks year after year, and thus making sure that they have something that they can fall back on, that they can really reliably rely on, who's going to pay them a good price for their product, and who's going to be back at the negotiating table next year. It also allows them to sell in quantities that really matter. If there's one roaster who buys 2,000 pounds a year from one given cooperative, that's cool, that's nice. And if there's a whole bunch of those folks out there, then that's going to make a nice cushion for them to be able to fall back on. But being able to buy 2-3 containers a year from these cooperatives gives them a really nice pillow to be able to
leverage,
exactly.
Market leverage. Very good. Joe, contrast that with a model of conventional brokered coffee.
So again, we want to kind of keep it to where it's non-certified versus certified. So it may be the case that all of these things are still kind of in place, but in a different style of importation or a different style of relationship. So also to be very clear, importers like Cafe Imports work very closely with several fair trade cooperatives around the world. So there are opportunities in a community where there may be a bunch of farms that are co-opted together, but then there may also be other farms that are not part of that cooperative. So they may not be certified. They may be growing the same quality or better quality or worse quality. Quality could be variable, but they also need a way to sell their coffee. Fair trade, FLOW, the larger fair trade organization that's global, will not recognize a farm that is of a certain size. You have to be of a certain size in order to be fair trade certified or to be part of a cooperative. So some of those mid-sized farms that are producing some of the best quality in the world are not able to certify their coffee as fair trade. So they need also a place to sell their coffee.
A market.
A market, exactly. Some of the other things that you see is, generally speaking, and I'm going to make some generalities here. There are exceptions to all of these rules, but generally, quality grows in terms of altitude. And altitude, as you know, as it gets smaller and smaller, or as it goes higher and higher, it gets smaller and smaller up a mountain. So generally, that mid-range of your altitude, those farmers need to collectively work together in order to produce higher quality. Whereas the farmers that are a little higher up have a really large advantage when it comes to quality. So that middle part of that range, in order for them to sell their coffee and get a price that is worthwhile, that can help them with the input, they have to be co-opted together. And for those farmers that are a little higher up, they don't necessarily need that kind of attention. However,
just like real estate,
yes.
Location,
yes.
location, huh?
Yeah, so it gets tricky, and there's a lot of layers to the discussion. Another thing that I want to point out is there are a lot of other terms that are thrown out around the coffee supply chain. Fair trade is an actual term that is third-party verified. Organic is an actual term that is third-party verified. These are there are very strict guidelines in order to have these certifications. A farmer has to reapply, or a group has to reapply. They have to be audited by that third party. There's a paper trail. There are other terms like relationship coffee, direct trade. Those terms are not verifiable. There's no third party that's going in and saying, this is certified direct trade, this is certified relationship, or anything like that. So it's also important to understand what those certificates mean, and that if a farmer or if a cooperative is going through the process of getting that third-party verification, if they're paying for all of these steps, if they're inviting all of that oversight, they're doing that for very specific reasons. So understanding what the reasons are in each situation allows you to have a fuller understanding of what you're going to get from that particular cooperative.
To give you an idea, when I buy fair trade organic coffee, I get a certificate from the broker that states very clearly on there, this is fair trade certified. This is organically certified by a specific organic certification program. So anytime you see fair trade organic on our website, it indeed is fair trade organic.
And as a roaster, if you're selling fair trade coffee or if you're selling organic coffee, you too have to have a certificate. You too have to have an identification number. There has to be third-party verification, and that flows all the way back through the supply chain to where that coffee originated, including the importer or including the roaster, all along the chain. That's certifiable.
And it's also that
Go ahead.
these terms that you just threw out of direct trade relationship coffee, those aren't mutually exclusive with fair trade.
Right.
A lot of people like to talk about fair trade versus direct trade. It's not necessarily a meaningful distinction. I like to think about it like fair trade is like cheese and direct trade is like pasta. It's not that you can easily have one without the other, but they also go great together. There are a lot of direct trade roasters that buy from fair trade organic cooperatives. Senfro Cafe in Peru comes to mind. I know a lot of super high-end people who will talk up their direct trade relationships with these producers, and they are buying a fair trade organic product. At the same time, Peace Coffee, we have this same kind of direct trade relationship with these folks. We take trips down to Guatemala. We have a very deep connection with the Permata Gallo cooperative in Sumatra. And these are deep relationships, and we get to have a back and forth discussion with these cooperatives about what kind of coffee we want to buy versus what they can produce, which is in every meaningful way a direct trade relationship. And so it's not an either-or situation.
And that's when I contacted Jackson and Joe this month, I said, let's not pit conventional farming against organic farming. Mm-hmm. Let's not pit broker-traded coffee against fair trade coffee. For me, it's not an either or. As I go to the cupping table, I'm paying attention to the quality in the coffee. And this month, Rwanda jumped out at us, and I think Serena and I cupped it 87.5, 87.5 and an 88. And we gave it an 87.75. I'm looking for the best coffee. Others of you are selling to churches, to PTAs that are adamant about fair trade and organic. That's legitimate. That's a valid reason. As your customer is demanding fair trade and organic, you've got the responsibility to meet that need and also do education around that issue. I hope what they're after is the best quality of coffee, just like the three of us are.
Well, the beautiful thing about it is if you are a fair trade cooperative, it's going to benefit you to also be quality driven. So even though there may be a bottom floor that you won't get paid less than, the more quality that you add to your product, the more price gets added to the bottom line. The more quantity of your product that you grow at that high quality, the more pounds you're going to have at that higher price. Senfro Cafe is a fantastic example of this. They produce, we pick up around 20 containers of coffee from them every year, and it's extremely high quality coffee. So we're not only paying them some kind of bottom line that's the minimum that fair trade allows, we're paying them well above and beyond what fair trade allows because they have the quality that we know we can then in turn sell and put that money back into their pockets. So the not only are fair trade farmers looking to score on a bottom line price, they're actually working very, very hard with organic means to grow some of the best coffees on the planet. That being said, there may be other situations where organic is not possible. They may not be able to, for whatever reason, wherever they are, grow with only organic inputs. So in those kinds of situations, it's important to really understand what the inputs are, why the inputs are there, what the inputs into the soil are doing to the surrounding area. There are a lot of other layers that are in place. And then there are other things where something may be USDA organic, but in Canada they wouldn't recognize it as being organic. Or somewhere else it may not be considered organic because something that the USDA says is it organic may in fact not be recognized by another country. So there are all kinds of layers to this scenario.
I hope we've clarified a bit of the mud that's out there around the issue of conventional versus fair trade organic. Jackson, any closing thoughts for the folks?
Oh,
Buy Peace Coffee.
definitely buy Peace Coffee.
All right.
By all accounts, buy Peace Coffee. But keep buying coffee that is purchased through people like Cafe Imports. I would say the big thing is, like Joe said, organic and fair trade certification provide a very concrete set of things that these producers need to do. But a weird byproduct of that is it also provides a very handy minimum amount of things to do in order to put a cool word on your package. What I would encourage everybody to do is do your homework. Find out about your roasters' buying practices. Find out about your importers' buying practices. Find out about the agricultural practices that are going on. Because, like I said, there's specific things that need to be done in order to be fair trade and organic. There are very iffy, weird things that, not iffy and weird, fuzzy things that need to be done to be called direct trade.
Nebulous.
Nebulous, exactly. But the best way to find out what's actually happening is to go and find it out. And if you email, a roaster or whatever, they will happily talk about their brewing practices.
Ask questions.
Yeah.
The coffee that I put up on the website, I give you as much information as I got. And if you've got a question that's deeper, let me know, and I'll get a hold of Vote for Joe next to me, and he'll get you the answer. Joe, closing thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, when you are thinking about what coffees you're going to buy, one of the reasons that specialty coffee is so great in that it's so separated from conventional coffee or commodity coffee, exchange grade coffee, is that quality provides a support system for the people that are involved in that quality supply chain. So even if something is not fair trade or not organic, if it is of extreme high quality, that alone speaks to the fact that there are inputs that were afforded that coffee. There are people that were professionals that have vast amounts of knowledge and understanding in order to make that kind of quality come to fruition at the farm level. Sometimes we think about fair trade and organic, or how we buy coffee, as being some kind of a savior figure that's buying coffee for a help reason, and that's not the case. We are professionals on this end of the product, they are professionals on that end of the product, and they know what they're doing. They're educated, and it's not an us and them relationship. We are all part of the supply chain together, and we all need to invest in quality across that supply chain for roasters to be successful and for producers to be successful. So having an imperialistic look at the supply chain is a really dangerous place to start asking questions. It should be more about focusing on quality, where you are, how you can maximize that quality, how you can get a consumer to pay more for that quality, and then that is going to be the best thing that you can do for the entire supply chain behind you, because then that farmer will be able to charge more that following year. You're going to build a market that will support higher prices, and that's what's needed.
Very good. I can't top that. I can't touch that. That's a good conclusion. Jackson, thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
Joe,
Yeah,
as
Jackson.
always, my homeboy. All right. Next month, we have Brother Joe over here that's going to help us with blends. I'll be very honest. When I started in coffee, I thought blends was the bee's knees. It is much more difficult than can be expressed very well. So January, we're going to focus on blending, and Joe will be back to help us with that.
And blends is a hot topic right now. On Open Coffee, there's a really hot discussion that I'm involved in. I was also just asked to do a thing with Barista Magazine because it's heating up, and I'm in the minority of my viewpoints on this.
Are you a blender or a single origin boy?
I love single origins. I mean, if I'm sitting down to a coffee, I love single origins. But if I'm going to blend, I want the blend to be its own thing. So there's your snapshot.
Oh, that's a
There's your
tease.
snapshot.
And we'll see you next month, same station, same time. Thanks, folks.